Let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, my rock and my redeemer. So as we've been coming down to the end of our year, I wanted to take some time and really focus on these three big foundational elements of our own individual walk of faith that we all go through. But also, these three foundational things really are core elements of who we are as a church, not just in Oak Arbor, but in the new church in general. And these three ideas are how to have a healthy relationship with God, how to have a healthy relationship with His Word, and how to have a healthy relationship with each other. And I think these three things go together so well because this really does encapsulate so much of the big picture of what spiritual life is all about. It's all about how we understand who God is and how we relate to Him. It's how we learn from Him and know where we can find His truths and His teachings to guide us. And then it's about what we do with that information and that knowledge and that understanding in how we treat other people and how we interact with other people around us. And so today we're focusing on that third part, on building healthy relationships with other people. And one of the things that's always interesting about this is that loving our neighbor or treating other people with charity is something that is easier with some people than it is with others. I think all of us can probably think off the top of our head of a few people for whom it is just really easy to love them. People who just seem to see things the same way that we do, and we just seem to get along. And if the Lord's command was to just love people like that, we would say, well, this is so easy. I can do this with my eyes closed. But what are we supposed to do with people who don't always see things the way that we do? What are we supposed to do with people who we look at and we think, I'm not sure this person really is living the way that they're supposed to. I'm not sure they are living up to the standards that the Lord wants for all of us. We know that we are supposed to love our neighbor, but what are we supposed to do with these kinds of people? And especially, what if there's people who do things that specifically hurt us? How are we supposed to respond in a loving way if someone does something that hurts us? This is a big topic, a big issue that all of us have to wrestle with in our spiritual lives. And so to think about it, I want to turn now to the Lord's Word and read from the Gospel of Luke chapter 6. And we are going to look at a couple different things that show up in this chapter. There's a lot that's sort of packed in here, but in the second half of the chapter, Jesus is just teaching, and he teaches a lot of different things that all seem to sort of build on each other, and they all have to do with the way that we relate to other people. So I'll begin reading here. This is Luke chapter 6, starting in verse 27, and this is Jesus speaking. But I say to you who hear, love your enemies, do good to those who hate you, bless those who curse you, and pray for those who spitefully use you. To him who strikes you on the one cheek, offer the other also. And from him who takes away your cloak, do not withhold your tunic either. Give to everyone who asks of you, and from him who takes away your goods, do not ask for them back. And just as you want men to do to you, you also do to them likewise. But if you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? For even sinners love those who love them. And if you do good to those who do good to you, what credit is that to you? For even sinners do the same. And if you lend to those from whom you hope to receive back, what credit is that to you? For even sinners lend to sinners to receive as much back. But love your enemies, do good, and lend, hoping for nothing in return, and your reward will be great, and you will be sons of the Most High, for he is kind to the unthankful and evil. Therefore be merciful, just as your Father also is merciful." This is some powerful teachings in here. The idea that we are supposed to love our enemies. That's an incredible thing to think about. When someone hurts us, when someone does something that seems to be rooted in evil towards us, the Lord is saying that we are supposed to respond with love. He says if someone strikes your cheek, you're supposed to turn and offer them the other one. If someone takes your cloak, you're supposed to hand them also your tunic. This is pretty amazing, radical stuff for Jesus to tell us. But I think a natural question that we would all ask ourselves is, so then, what are we supposed to do with these people who are doing bad things? How are we supposed to really help them? Because is it really loving to just allow someone to do things that are harmful? Is it helpful for someone to hit us and to say, okay, you can do it again? Is that really what helps someone become a better person? Obviously not. I mean, anyone who has ever tried to raise a child will tell you that sometimes the best way to show love is to discipline, is to offer corrections, is to tell people where they need help, where they need to change. And I think that the Lord knows this. So why did he tell us to love our enemies? Why did he tell us to do all of this stuff? Well, we know that we have to be able to help people. We have to be able to lead people to the Lord and lead them to live a better life. So then the question is, how can we do this in a way that is healthy? How can we love our enemies in a way that actually achieves goodness? And I think when we keep reading in Luke chapter 6, the Lord, right after he tells us to love our enemies, gives us the answer to this. So we are continuing where we left off. This is starting at verse 37. "Judge not, and you shall not be judged. Condemn not, and you shall not be condemned. Forgive, and you will be forgiven. Give, and it will be given to you. Good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over will be put into your bosom. For with the same measure that you use, it will be measured back to you." And he spoke a parable to them. "Can the blind lead the blind? Will they not both fall into the ditch? A disciple is not above his teacher, but everyone who is perfectly trained will be like his teacher. And why do you look at the speck in your brother's eye, but do not perceive the plank in your own eye? Or how can you say to your brother, 'Brother, let me remove the speck that is in your eye,' when you yourself do not see the plank that is in your own eye? Hypocrite, first remove the plank from your own eye, and then you will see clearly to remove the speck that is in your brother's eye." Now, here we have some more of these teachings that might seem kind of perplexing to us. We have Jesus saying, "Judge not, and you won't be judged. Don't condemn, and you won't be condemned." But I think most of us would recognize, well, we have to be able to judge other people's actions to an extent. We have to be able to discern between what's right and what's wrong. Otherwise, society is going to fall apart. But in this passage, when the Lord says, "Don't judge and you won't be judged. Don't condemn and you won't be condemned," he's not just talking about discerning between what's right and what's wrong in other people's actions. He's talking about coming from a place of anger, coming from a place of wanting to condemn someone else. That's what he means by judge, and that's why he says condemn. He's saying if you come at someone from a place of anger if you want to retaliate against someone for the evil that they have done, then you're not going to actually achieve anything good. That's why right after he says that, he says, can the blind lead the blind? Won't they both just fall into a ditch? If someone does something that hurts us, and we want to respond from a place of anger, which really comes from a place of hatred inside of us, then we are committing a sin just the same way that they did. We're just trying to fight fire with fire, and it's not going to actually get us anywhere. And then we move to this story of, or the parable of the speck versus the plank. And I'm sure we're all familiar with this idea that, we shouldn't look for the speck in our brother's eye when we have a beam in our own eye. But this story, I think oftentimes we read this story and we just think that it's about hypocrisy, of sort of, we can't really judge other people because we all sin in our own lives. And there's an element to which that's true. But I think that this story is talking about something even more specific than that. It's not just in general, we're all sinners, and that's why we have a beam in our eye. But notice that the story doesn't actually say, it's not your job to remove the speck from your brother's eye, just leave it alone. It says, first remove the beam from your own eye, and then you'll be able to see clearly to help your brother remove the speck from his eye. And so in the teachings for the new church, we're told that the eyes represent our understanding of truth. It's our understanding of what is right and what is wrong. And wood, which is where we get this speck, we think it's a speck of wood, or a beam, which is a beam of wood, that represents goodness. So wood represents goodness, but in its opposite sense, that means that it also can represent evil. And so when it's talking about a speck and a beam in our eyes, it's talking about evil getting in the way of our understanding of what is right and what is wrong. And so the reason in this story that Jesus tells us that the person who's trying to remove the speck from their brother has the beam in their own eye is because so often when we see that speck in someone else's eye and we feel so moved as to do something about it, oftentimes we are coming from a place of judgment. We're coming from a place of condemnation. We're coming from a place of believing that we know better than this other person how they should be living. And there again, if that's where we are coming from, then we don't have the ability to see clearly what would actually help this person. When we are coming from that, then we have all of our own feelings mixed up into it. And there's a part of us that just wants to make this person pay for what they've done. And the Lord is saying, that's not loving your enemies. That's not loving your neighbor the way that you are supposed to. And so if we really want to help our neighbors, what we have to do is be willing to remove this beam from our eye. We have to be willing to let go of any feeling of animosity or anger towards someone for something that they have done. We have to let go of the feeling of wanting to get revenge or retribution and instead go to the Lord and say, how can I help this person? Why did this person act the way that they did? And what can I do to help them not feel that they have to do that again? And I think one of the best ways that we can do this is to catch ourselves when we find ourselves having these negative thoughts about other people. And we can remind ourselves of how we are supposed to love our neighbors, how we are supposed to hold these other people in our lives. And for this, I want to share one last passage from the teachings of the new church that I think is a really good concept that we can remember in these moments where we catch ourselves thinking negatively about someone else. This comes from Arcana Celestia number 1079, And it's talking about the difference between people who look at others with charity versus people who look at others without charity. It says, where charity does not exist, self-love is present, and consequently, hatred towards all who do not show favor to ourselves. As a result, they see in the neighbor nothing except his evil. Or if they do see anything good, they either perceive it as nothing or else place a bad interpretation on it. It is altogether otherwise with those with whom charity is present. And from such presence or absence of charity, these two kinds of people are distinguished from each other, especially when they enter the next life. With those who have no charity, a feeling of hatred is manifest in every single thing. They wish to try everyone, and indeed to pass judgment on them. Their one desire is to discover what is evil in them, all the time having it in mind to condemn, punish, and torment. But those who have charity hardly notice the evil in another person, but instead notice all of the goods and truths that are his. And on his evils and falsities they place a good interpretation. Of such a nature are all angels, it being something that they have from the Lord, who bends everything evil into good. I think that this passage serves as such a good reminder, because all of us fall into this trap of seeing the faults in other people, seeing the areas where other people we think could improve, seeing the things that they do that we don't like. But when we look at people that way, we are looking at them without charity. We aren't coming from a place of love. But if we look at people with charity, then we will hardly even notice their faults. But instead we will notice everything that is good and true about that person. And faults that we see, we will put a good interpretation on. Now again, this doesn't mean that we just let anything go and that we just allow people to do whatever they want and we're just ready to smile and give them a hug no matter what. But it's saying that if we look at people from this light, from a place of love, from a place of charity, from an assumption that there is goodness in this person and that they are trying their best to be a good person, that is how we will be able to see clearly how we can show up for them and help them. Because when people act out, that's what they need. They need help. Whether it's help from the Lord, help from loved ones, help from their family and friends. And this is our big message for today. That when we think about how to build healthy relationships with other people in our lives, we can celebrate for the people for whom it's really easy, the people who we just get along with, and we can love them with our eyes closed. But we also need to remember that the Lord calls on us to love even the people who aggravate us, even the people who don't always treat us the best, even the people who don't always follow the rules and do things the way that they are supposed to do it. But the way that we love them is to be willing to help them, to be willing to support them, and to be willing to have the humility to stop ourselves from falling into the trap of just looking at their faults and pointing them out and looking down on other people, because that's not loving. And if we do this, if all of us banded together and focused on looking at each other with charity and with the thought of how can I love and support the people around me, that is how we build a heavenly community on this earth. Because as that passage said, that is the way that every angel and the Lord himself looks at everyone in the entire human race. Amen. Please rise for a blessing.